2:17 a.m.
But while the fast attack craft were fleeing back to their coastline, a new threat was already developing deep beneath the surface. Unknown to the crew of the American destroyer, an enemy diesel-electric submarine had been lying in wait, completely silent, sitting on the ocean floor just 12 miles away. For hours, the hostile submarine crew had been listening to the acoustic signatures above. With their surface fleet routed, the order came down from high command: engage and destroy the American vessel at all costs. Diesel-electric submarines are notoriously difficult to track when running on battery power. They emit almost zero engine noise, making them virtual ghosts in shallow coastal waters. The hostile commander ordered the torpedo tubes flooded. 2 heavyweight, wire-guided torpedoes were primed. The target was locked. Down in the dark, a muffled thump echoed through the water as the torpedoes launched. Back on the surface, inside the American destroyer's sonar shack, a sudden acoustic spike shattered the silence. The automated systems immediately flagged the anomaly. The sonar operator stared at the waterfall display as 2 distinct, high-frequency streaks appeared. Torpedo in the water, bearing 180, closing fast. The clock was now ticking in seconds. Unlike cruise missiles, which can be thrown off by electronic jamming, a wake-homing or acoustic torpedo is a completely different beast. It is designed to ignore radar decoys and swim directly into the ship's massive wake, exploding right underneath the keel to break the ship in half. The captain didn't hesitate. Hard starboard. Launch acoustic countermeasures. The massive destroyer leaned heavily into the turn, its engines roaring to life as it attempted to outmaneuver the incoming steel killers. From the stern of the ship, a small device called an acoustic decoy was launched into the water. The decoy immediately began broadcasting a massive, simulated engine roar, mimicking the sound of a panicking destroyer. The first torpedo bit the bait. It veered hard to the left, tracking the decoy, and detonated prematurely in a massive, blinding underwater explosion that shook the ocean floor. But the second torpedo didn't miss a beat. Armed with a more advanced guidance system, it ignored the decoy, ignored the bubbles, and locked directly onto the real acoustic signature of the American ship. It was less than 30 seconds from impact. Inside the combat center, the air was electric. This was the moment of truth. The destroyer activated its last line of defense, a highly classified, ultra-cavitating anti-torpedo torpedo. Launched directly into the path of the incoming threat, the mini interceptor traveled at incredible speeds underwater. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Under a complete electronic blackout, a $3 billion American destroyer just sailed directly into the deadliest choke point on Earth. No lights, no radar, total silence. But they weren't hiding. They were setting a trap. For months, enemy fast attack craft had been harassing global shipping lanes, thinking they were invisible to Western eyes. But the U.S. Navy was about to show them exactly what happens when you mistake electronic silence for weakness. What happened next in the dark waters of the Strait didn't just shock the enemy command. It rewrote the rules of modern naval engagement forever. To understand how this high-stakes trap was sprung, we have to look at the ship at the center of the storm, the USS Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Equipped with the Aegis combat system, this floating fortress can track over 100 targets simultaneously. But tonight, its most powerful weapon wasn't its missiles. It was a brand new, classified electronic warfare suite designed to do one thing: turn the enemy's own technology against them. At exactly 0200 hours, 3 hostile fast attack boats equipped with advanced anti-ship missiles slipped out of their hidden coastal base. They thought they had the element of surprise. They thought the American destroyer was blind. Little did they know they were sailing straight into a digital kill zone. Suddenly, the enemy boats activated their targeting radars. A hard lock. On the screens of the hostile command, a massive target appeared. They fired. 2 cruise missiles screamed off their launchers, skimming just feet above the water at Mach 0.9, straight toward the American ship. In the American Combat Information Center, there was no panic. No one reached for the missile launch buttons. Instead, the electronic warfare officer flipped a single switch. What happened next defied belief. The incoming missiles didn't hit the destroyer. In fact, they completely lost track of it. The new American jamming system didn't just block the enemy radar. It cloned the ship's signature, creating a ghost target 2 miles to the west. The enemy missiles slammed harmlessly into empty ocean water. But the trap wasn't finished. With the enemy missiles spent and their positions completely exposed, the U.S. Navy sent a message that Tehran and Moscow would hear loud and clear. Minutes later, MH-60 Seahawk helicopters emerged from the dark, illuminating the hostile boats with targeting lasers. Stripped of their stealth and completely outmatched, the hostile crews realized they had lost everything before a single American round was fired. They turned back in full retreat. This encounter proved to the world that the future of naval dominance isn't just about who has the biggest guns. It's about who controls the digital spectrum. The U.S. Navy just showed that in the dark. They own the night. A deafening shockwave erupted beneath the surface. The interceptor smashed directly into the hostile torpedo just 300 yards from the hull. The explosion sent a massive plume of water into the night sky, rocking the $3 billion warship, but the hull held firm. The American destroyer hadn't just survived a multi-domain ambush. It had completely neutralized the enemy's best tactical assets without taking a single scratch. As the ship cleared the danger zone and sailed into open waters, the message sent to global adversaries was unmistakable. The U.S. Navy doesn't just defend the seas, they dominate every single inch of them, from the sky right down to the ocean floor. The immediate danger had passed, but the true nightmare was just beginning. The destruction of the enemy submarine didn't deter the hostile high command. It pushed them over the edge. Realizing their asymmetric assets had utterly failed against a single American destroyer, they made a desperate, catastrophic decision. They ordered a full-scale, coordinated regional escalation. Deep within the enemy's mainland, heavy concrete blast doors slowly slid open. Deep inside subterranean missile silos, the pre-launch checklists for liquid-fueled anti-ship ballistic missiles were being finalized. These weren't standard cruise missiles. These were weapons designed specifically to bypass carrier strike group defenses by climbing into the upper atmosphere before descending at hypersonic speeds directly onto their targets. At the same moment, the American destroyer's satellite uplink began flashing an amber alert. A high-priority flash message from North American Aerospace Defense Command was beamed directly into the captain's terminal. Space-based infrared satellites had just detected massive thermal blooms across the coastal mountains. Multiple ballistic missile launches were confirmed. The strategy was clear. The enemy was attempting to saturate the airspace. If you fire enough missiles simultaneously, even the most advanced radar system in the world will eventually run out of interceptors. It was a mathematical game of life and death. Inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere shifted from tense to clinical. The time for tactical maneuvering was over. Now, it was a battle of raw computing power and automated defense systems. Tracks 501 through 504 confirmed. The weapons control officer shouted, "Ballistic trajectory. Terminal phase in 4 minutes." The Aegis combat system immediately shifted into ballistic missile defense mode. The ship's massive Spy-1 radar arrays redirected their full electrical power toward the upper atmosphere, tracking the incoming threats as they crossed the edge of space. The missiles were moving at Mach 6. At that speed, a human being cannot react fast enough to aim a weapon. The ship's computers were given full autonomy to authorize engagement. From the vertical launching system on the bow, the hatches blew open in rapid succession. A blinding roar filled the night as 3 SM-3 interceptors tore into the sky, leaving thick pillars of white smoke behind them. These interceptors don't carry explosive warheads. Instead, they rely on pure kinetic energy, a hit-to-kill system. It is the technological equivalent of hitting a bullet with another bullet in total darkness. The seconds tick down like hours. 50 miles above the ocean, the first SM-3 interceptor adjusted its course using micro-thrusters. It locked its infrared eye onto the leading enemy ballistic missile. Impact. The sheer kinetic force of the collision instantly vaporized both objects in a silent, brilliant flash of light at the edge of the atmosphere. 2 more impacts followed in rapid succession. The sky rained molten debris over hundreds of square miles of open ocean. But there was a problem. The 4th enemy missile had used a sophisticated decoy package, deploying dozens of false radar targets. The final SM-3 interceptor bit on a decoy, leaving the real, live warhead plunging down toward the destroyer at 7,000 feet per second. "Missile breakthrough!" the radar operator yelled. "Terminal dive. 20 seconds to impact." The destroyer's secondary defense line automatically kicked in. An SM-6 missile erupted from the deck, designed for low-altitude atmospheric intercepts. It detonated mere miles from the ship, shredding the incoming warhead with an expanding cloud of tungsten shrapnel. The shockwaves slammed into the destroyer, causing the hull to groan, but the ship remained intact. Yet, before the crew could even draw a breath of relief, the radar screens lit up again. The ballistic missile strike had been a diversion. Under the cover of the ballistic radar clutter, the enemy had launched a swarm of low-flying, radar-evading kamikaze drones from mobile ground launchers along the coast. Over 40 drones were flying just 20 feet above the water, hiding in the radar sea clutter. The ship's long-range missiles were useless against a swarm this dense and low. The drones were closing the distance rapidly, their lawnmower-like engines humming in unison across the dark water. The captain looked at the tactical display. Activate phalanx and the laser weapon system. Free to engage. On the port and starboard sides of the ship, the automated 20mm phalanx close-in weapon system spun to life, their barrels tracking the incoming drone swarm with terrifying agility. Simultaneously, a hum vibrated through the deck as the ship's prototype high-energy laser system drooped. In a fraction of a second, an alert operator manually slewed a heavy machine gun, unleashing a desperate burst of fire. The drone exploded 50 yards out, showering the superstructure with burning fuel and debris. Silence finally returned to the circuit. The drone swarm was completely neutralized. The enemy had thrown everything they possessed at a single American warship: fast attack boats, advanced submarines, ballistic missiles, and a high-tech drone swarm. And yet, the destroyer remained afloat, its radar still spinning, its crew still standing. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of gold and amber, the true scale of the victory became apparent. The U.S. Navy hadn't just survived a localized ambush. They had systematically dismantled an entire regional military infrastructure in a matter of hours. The message was received globally by every watching adversary. Attacking a U.S. naval asset isn't an act of war. It is a guarantee of immediate, absolute tactical annihilation.